Welcome to the deconstruction video of yet another React challenge in the debugging challenge series. Now, this is a code base given to us by one of our peers, right? So, it's first thing we want to do here is we'll try to understand the code a bit and then get into reproducing the issue to start with. Now, here we seems to have a to-do application, and if I check the JSX for this, I can see the titles. I have a input element, have a button, and this seems to be printing the to-dos. Word is to-dos defined, so to-dos is a state. It's an array to start with, which is an empty array. Then if to-dos is empty, it prints in none, so which is what we can see now on page load. And otherwise, if to-dos has something, it prints up a list essentially. So the to-do item is essentially displayed as a list. Now what happens on, let's try to understand what is happening for when we try to add a new item. So the input element seems to be a control component, so it shows up the value of new to do item, which is a string when the page load, empty string when the page loads. And if we type something in here, it calls the handle input change handler, which updates the new to do item state to whatever value we typed. Now on button click, handle add to do handler gets called. We are updating the state, we are adding the new to do item, we are printing it, we are updating the state. So it seems to be logically correct. Let's try to, now that we have a reasonable understanding of the code shared with us, let's try to reproduce the bug, right? So I'll try adding a to do item. So let's say to do 1. Let me click on add to do. Now you can see that it didn't really update or display to me the to do one item as a list, which is what is supposed to be happening, right? But one other thing that happened, because we were, let's say, printing the to do's list, which is a state again, in here is it's logging the value and seems like it's actually updating the to do's array. So our to do's array, by when the page loads, is an empty. Handle add to do gets called when we click on the button. It adds the new to do item which we just typed in the input element. We are printing it. When printing it, seems to be that the array seems to be updated to have one element now. We are calling set to do's. It's updating the to do state. Now let's try the other input we had here from our peer, right? So they were saying when I try to type something more here, it seems to be displayed. So you can see that when I try to type something else here, now it shows up. Weird, right? Let's try to let's say figure out from by googling. Now that we understand what the issue seems to be, right? So it seems to be like the array is getting added. Let's say the state is getting essentially updated. So we know that whatever to do's has is what we display here. So if it was to do one displaying here, somehow the state got updated, but just that clicking on the add to do button or whatever we are doing here by using set to do's didn't cause a re-render of this particular app component. It only triggered a re-render when we added 2 more here, or I added a new item, which essentially is caused by handle input change, where we are updating the set new to do item. Now this seems to update the state as well as re-render the component, but this particular call where we are setting a new updating the array and setting using the useState handler, it doesn't seem to re-render the component. Let's try to validate our hypothesis here that it's just that the array is getting updated, but just that, but set to do's call we are having here, it makes the state update, but it's not triggering a re-render of the component, right? So we'll do something just to verify our hypothesis here that set to do's is not re-rendering the component. We'll cause a re-render of the component by updating another state. So we have this new to do item ka state. We'll just reset it to make it empty when the button is clicked. Now let's try to refresh it, and let me type to do 1 again, and this time you will see that the array printed again, just like earlier. It's the updated array. We are setting to do's. The only thing we added, let's say additionally, is we are resetting the input value, which again is a state, triggers a re-render. So seems like this particular set, let's say use state update or state update, is triggering a re-render, but this is not. Now let's try to understand why this is happening, right? So we'll go on and Google usual stuff, React hook state doesn't trigger re-render with arrays. So let me see if I can find and use state reference. Yeah, sorry, I'll go with the first one. So you can see that there is an issue. Why is useState not triggering a re-render? What are they doing here? So they have an array. Again, numbers seems to be an array. They're passing it as a new reference, updating the array, adding the array. So let's say setting the updated state to the updated array. So seems like similar to what we are doing here. Now let's go to the let's say suggestion here, right? You're calling set numbers and passing it the array it already has. Okay, so old is a reference to the numbers array. So essentially it's what they're talking about seems to be correct. We are passing the same reference only even if we are updating the array. Okay, what is the issue there? You changed one of its values but still the same array, and I suspect React doesn't see any reason to re-render because state hasn't changed. Okay, so it seems like what the person here is suggesting is we have updated the array but it's still the same array reference, right? So we know that arrays objects in JavaScript are passed by reference or are by used by reference. So even if you updated the array to React, it's still the same array. So this particular person is suspecting that React probably won't trigger a re-render if it's the same array. So the one resolution they are suggesting here is to use the destructuring syntax here to clone the array. So essentially clone the array, use a clone, pass a cloned array. Okay, let's try to do that. Okay, so now before we move ahead to that, right, this seems to let's say resolve our issue. Okay, so this our to-do app is working fine now. It seems to resolve our issue. Whenever if I add a to-do item, it works now, but we are not really debugging the actual cause here. We are just debugging the symptom here, which was it was not triggering a re-render. So that was the symptom. The actual cause was we are passing the, let's say, the same reference to the array. So we should ideally try to resolve the actual cause itself instead of a symptom. So let's try to do that. We'll try and create a clone of this array, new to-dos. You can use any of the JavaScript methods to clone an array. I'll go with the destructuring syntax itself, which was suggested, and I'll use new to-dos.push and I'll update my state with set it. I'll just let's say comment this out for now. This again is a let's say good enough feature we have. We want to clean up the input once a to-do is added, right? But just to ensure the state is not it's not triggering re-render due to this particular state update, I'll just comment it out for now. Now we are back to our initial setting where we are updating the set to-dos array, just that we are having a cloned array this time. Let's try to, I'll refresh. Let me try adding a new array, and you can see that this adds a new array. Now I'm printing the to-dos let's say old state, so this doesn't get updated, right? We just cloned an array, so I'll just print both to compare to-dos as well as new to-dos. Let me refresh. I'll start from scratch to do one, and you'll see that first array is empty, which is to-dos, which we didn't really update, right? So we created a clone, then updated. Next time we add, let's say to-do 2, you'll see that to-dos, the actual state was updated, and we also added a second item. In the next log or next click, we'll see that the actual state gets updated. Okay, let's reflect back on what we just did, right? What was the process we took to debug this particular error? We started by understanding the code base because it was written by someone else. We understood the issue by reproducing the error. In this case, there wasn't really an error as such. React wasn't showing error. It was just that the app wasn't working correctly. We figured out that mostly the issue could have been because we are printing the updated state. The state seems to be, or the state variable seems to be getting updated, just that the set to do's call was not triggering a re-render due to that. We googled and figured it out that the issue was caused because if React doesn't really update the state if it's a same reference. So unless the reference to the let's say updated state changes, React doesn't trigger a re-render, and because objects and arrays similar structure in JavaScript are passed by reference, this is the case. This is why it happened for arrays but not for when we tried it for set new to do item, which is a string. Now one other thing we looked at here is, even though let's say the symptom here was triggering the say set to do's call not triggering a re-render, we were able to resolve that by causing, let's say by through a hack where we caused a re-render by using set new to do item ka state update. Now this, even though we checked, even though was causing even though resolve the issue and the app the work, we were not really treating the cause of the issue, root cause of the issue. We figured it out how to do that. We went out, Googled the actual issue, we typed out something let's say meaningful React state hooks state doesn't trigger re-render with arrays. We checked out one of the references, and one not in this case the first reference turned out to be helpful. Probably you'll have to check 1, 2, 3, try it out, see what is helpful for you. Now the next thing we did was we tried out the resolution, seems to be working now, and that's how we debug this particular error.